Cool. All right, I'm recording. So I'll go over the eyes quickly. Jonathan, today's a pretty free session. I'm just gonna answer any questions you guys have. We might look at touch on digital sculpting later, but pretty optional lab because I know a lot of you guys are super busy with GEW, and I'm not trying to impede on that time. Because I know personally, I was skipping labs like crazy at the end of last year when it came to this time. Uh, you just gotta, I don't know, it's hard to make time for everything, so, and definitely you want to prioritize GDW. So, the first thing we're gonna do though is I'm gonna go over the eyes again for Anita. So, Anita, do you have something like this, like everything with just without the eyes, or? Yeah? Okay, perfect. So, the first thing we can do is go into our eyes themselves, into edit mode, and here I can select the front and the back vertex on the eye. Yeah, sure, Christian. Just present afterwards, and then I'll take a look. But if we have these two vertex selected, and we use Shift S, we can bring our cursor to our selection, which is going to put it right in the middle of our two selected vertex here. There we go. So Shift S, cursor selected. From there, I can go back into my bones. I'm going to reset this too, just so it's easier to see. But I can go back into my bones, and if I'm in my bones edit mode, if I hit Shift A now, it'll just add a new bone right at where my 3D cursor is, which I put directly on the eye here, right in the middle. And then I can bring this part back down. So I'm going to GZ to just bring it down, shrink the bone. And now I can use my vertex snapping up here. So I can hit Shift Tab, or I can just click it up here and make sure it's set to vertex. And it works for bones too. So I can snap any part of my bone to any vertex. So I'm just going to snap it to the front. And now my bone is perfectly lined up with my eye with no roll, and it's right in the center. And I can name it left, or L underscore I. And then I'm going to use Shift D here to duplicate. I'm going to grab the end of it and just move it back on Y so that it goes inside of the other one and turn off snapping. There we go. And I'm just making sure that the two bones are on the exact same point here. So they're on the same point here, but this one's just on the inside. I can call this one L underscore I parent. So what we're going to do is, and the reason we need the parent on the inside is we don't want to add a constraint to this bone directly so that we can move it independently later, but we can have this bone be a constraint, or have a constraint to our middle eye, mind's eye here, which we haven't made yet, but we will, so that when it copies the rotation, this eye will follow. But then if we want to make the eyes go in different directions, we can just use the eye bone instead of the parent bone, and it'll be able to look in a different direction. So the eye parent on the inside, and the eye bone on the outside. And now, they're not parented yet, so you click on the big bone, click on the small bone, and we'll parent it, and we can keep offset. Perfect. Does that all make sense? So but once we have the one eye done, we can take the bone on the inside, and since we used all of our snapping, there shouldn't be any roll, so they're perfectly flat right now. We can take the bone on the inside, and I'm going to duplicate this one as well, and move it towards the center. It's not perfectly centered, but it's towards the center. But what I know is that this vertex here on the mirror of my character is right in the center of the character. No, Andy, there's no activity today. This is just, I'm just going to be answering questions, doing fun sculpting stuff, I guess. If you'd rather be working on GDW, totally do that. You do not need to be here today. If you have questions, though, feel free to throw them in the chat, because I'll be answering everybody's questions today. Alright, so now that we have this duplicated bone out, if I turn my snapping on, I can snap it to this middle bone because I know it's dead center. If I hit X, then I can snap it to this bone, or this vertex's X location, which is what I want. I want it to stay parallel with the parent, but I also want it to be centered on the object. So if I link it to the X, or limit it to the X-axis when it's moving, then I can snap it to the X-axis of this particular vertex, which is dead center. And we can name this one Mind's Eye. So we have our Mind's Eye, which is a non-deformed bone. So the parent and the Mind's Eye should be non-deformed bones. So I'm just going to check that off for both of them. Check that one, check that one. And then I'm going to grab the Mind's Eye, duplicate it, and just move it out on the y-axis so that it's way in front of the character. And I'm just going to scale it up a bit so it's easier to see. So we have our Mind's Eye in the middle, our parent, and our deformed bone. Yeah, I just duplicated the smaller bone. It doesn't matter really, but the reason I duplicated the smaller bone is because then I can get it to be perfectly lined up like this if I just move it out on the y-axis. And I know it's still dead center because I've made the other bone dead center. Alright, so I'm listen a little bit closer. Now we're done with the edit mode stuff as long as everything's parented properly. And we can go into pose mode. Reset that. So I'm going to try moving this around. I'll try moving this around, and you can see it's parented properly. And that means we can start adding our constraints. So the first constraint is that this bone needs to copy this bone's rotation. So I'm going to click on the Mind's Eye, and then I'm going to click on the left parent bone. I use Control Drag here to deselect the outer bone, just because it's hard to click through it. So I can just Control Drag over it to get rid of it. And then I'm hitting Control Shift C to add a copy rotation. So now, if I rotate this bone will follow. And if I look at my bone constraint here, just to avoid any weirdness, I would recommend changing this to local, so that way the rotations are 1-to-1 between the two bones, which should work better and would be easier to understand in the editor. The next constraint we need is to constrain this bone to always be looking at this bone. So I'm going to select the target first. I'm going to rename it first actually. Name it our target. And then with the other bone, select this bone, other bone, Control Shift C again, and then I'm going to use a track 2. So here in the tracking at the very bottom, there's a track 2, and it's going to point up right away, It's not quite aligned by default, but we can change our tracking axis to make it line up. And you can see now, when we move the bone around, this bone will follow it, and the other eye will follow this bone. So if I move this over here, I can then move this bone out separately. And then all we have to do is take the left eye here, right click, and symmetrize. And the last thing we have to do is to just attach the eyes to the armature, which shouldn't be in this pose. It keeps putting itself back in it though. There we go. Take these bones, Control P to parent, automatic weights, and because we put it right in the center of the eye, when we do our automatic weights, what it should do is just one-to-one weight map this entire eye mesh to the bone. So if I go to my eyes now and go into weight paint, yeah, so the bones have been painted one-to-one, which will let them deform properly. So let's jump into pose mode now, and I can look around. The last thing is just parenting the bones to the head, so that it doesn't stay separate. For that, you can just take the eye bone and parent it to the head bone. But this is where weight painting would kind of come into play. You could use the weight painting to make it work, to make it follow the head better. So Control P, oh, I'm not in, that's why, I'm in pose mode, edit mode, there we go. Select the two parent bones, the head bone, Control P, keep offset, there we go. Back into pose mode. Now if I move the head around, they should move with it. Cool. Oh, I parented the wrong bones. You have to parent these ones, the parents. But I hope that clears that up. That bone to that bone. That bone to that bone. Now it should work. Yeah, there we go. Parent the small bone. No, parent the small. Parent the big bone to the small bone. Yeah, big one to small one, and then small one to the head. Yeah, and if you do it that way, it should deform with it. It's going to look a little weird if you only move the top part of the head, but if you move the jaw, the whole head, it'll deform properly. Oh, also the little bone in the middle. Parent that as well. So that they all move together. There we go. And now if I move it around, he'll keep looking at the target. The only one that has deform on is this big one. All the rest of them have it off. So this one has it off, the middle one has it off, and the small one in here has it off. Just the big one has it on. The rest of them are just going to be controllers. Yeah, and the middle bone to the head as well, so that it moves with them. And then you should have it working like this. Yeah, no worries. So with that then, I'll end that recording. And if there are other things to be recorded, I'll just go in and snip them all together later. So separate the animations. This one's actually really easy. But when you have your action and editor all set up and you have access to everything, here in the action editor, you have this list of animations that you make. And anytime you want to make a new one, oh right, I'm not sharing my screen. There we go. Alright, cool. So whenever you have your animation, you have all your windows set up and everything, somewhere you'll have an action editor. This layout doesn't exist by default in Blender, it's the one I made, but the animation one is pretty close. But you can change this to an action editor if you just want to use theirs. And anytime you just hit this little X here, it says unlink. That'll remove the current animation you're working on from the armature, and if you hit new, it'll allow you to make a new one. So I can call this new action. And now any animating I do over here will be linked to new action. So let's put this in pose mode and just, there we go. So now I've got new action with one frame. But you can see that all of my other actions are still here. So I still have my idle, my walk, dab, my walking. It destroyed my dab because I got rid of the keyframes when I was messing around with it earlier. But yeah, so that's all there is to it. It's actually really easy. Provided you're just doing like uploading to Sketchfab, that's all you have to do. If you're working with FBXs and you're talking with the guys working on your engine or whoever's working on your engine and they're using FBXs, there's a little bit more to it. Sometimes. Export into Sketchfab. Yep, so if I export this to Sketchfab right now, Sketchfab will have access to all of these, and then I can change it in Sketchfab. There's two ways to do it. One is to just upload the blend file. Personally, I think it's better to export an FBX. So if I export FBX, I can limit it to just my selected objects, so my armature and my mesh. I can just select armature, mesh, and other. And if I just export this to my desktop, I'll open up Sketchfab. If I grab it off my desktop, it'll take a second, but you'll see all the animations are there once it's done processing. Which, speaking of Sketchfab, if you have multiple armatures in the file, I'm not exactly sure how it handles it, but I don't think it works very well. So if you're trying to show off your final assets for GDW and you're pumping them all into one file for the Sketchfab upload, if you have your animated props and your animated character and everything in there, I'm not sure how well it works. Probably you're better off putting your animated props in a separate Sketchfab upload and just having all your static props in the one big Sketchfab upload. So that's, I believe, what is also due tomorrow night, I think. The GDW asset conglomeration. I'll just open up Canvas. That's not it. assignments. Due December 2nd. Yeah, so tomorrow night. Yeah, so if you've already like made all the assets, it's pretty easy. You just gotta kind of put them all together. So I'll just, I guess, go over this since I'm still recording. This will be in the recording. Um, Basically, what you need to do is take, for GDW students anyway, what you need to do is take all of your assets that you've created and put them into their own blend file, and then upload that to Sketchfab. So you've got a link to Sketchfab collection with your group assets, and like I said, you can have your animated assets in separate Sketchfab uploads, and also a blend file with all your assets in it. For the blend file, if you want, you can have everything. Since Blender's armatures will be specific, you can just have all the animations in one file, because Gavin will be able to switch between armatures and then switch between actions. Might be a little bit confusing, but shouldn't be too bad. And then for non-GDW students, you're just continuing with your environment with the prop and the character animated with the prop, and same kind of deal, uploading that to Sketchfab with the animation and posting the blend file. Morph animations? You mean like are using morph targets? Or sorry, not morph targets, shape keys? Like you've modeled... Yeah, you did mention that actually. I was kind of curious. You said you had like the drone shield and thing. Oh, I see. That's tricky. So for that, you're gonna probably want to go with the video. Just when you're recording the video to show everything off, just show the animation stuff off too. Yeah, yeah, that works. No problem. Cool. What was it? I don't think there's a way to even fake that in Blender, if I'm honest, because the only reason the Blender will only animate between two things if they have the same number of vertices and stuff like that. Although I guess so does your... These have the same. Okay, so you're just kind of hiding them by putting them all close together. Gotcha. Okay, so you can, if it is the same, then you can in Blender. So if I'll just make a new object real quick here. Move it over and add some loop cuts. Take this part, move it up. So we'll pretend that this is my one object here, and this is my other object. So what you have are shape keys. It's going to be a little bit weird though, because normally you do it all on one object. So here in the vertex settings, we have shape keys. Yes, so you can add shape keys. So, and no problem, Anita. I'll upload that and I'll ping you once it's all good. A little late for that. Yeah, so it's a little bit tricky, but I can add this as a shape key. I wonder, actually, if I join these two, and then take these bones, and no, okay. Yeah, it's a little bit too late for you to do that now since you've already modeled them, but if you did want it to be able to show in Blender, I could extend this part out now and move this down like that. I call this a new shape key. So I have my basic key and my key 1, and I can kind of switch between them. So key 1, value 0. Just, I don't know, scale this up. Rotate it like that. Key 2. It'll have to be in edit mode. Oh, I never signed a vertex group. Yeah, but you can use vertex groups and shape keys to sort of, well, it's not sort of, it literally is morph targets. Usually used for facial animation and stuff, but definitely could work for replicating your morph target animations within Blender. But like I said, you've got it already in engine working with morph targets, and you just you have to record the video anyway to show off your assets in game. I'm sure it's fine, because we didn't really teach you guys shape keys. Don't open file for each target. Only images. It's fine. They're still modeled. They're still being animated. It's fine. Yeah, we didn't go over shape keys. I mentioned them to Gavin one lecture, and then I think he briefly went over them one lecture just to just show the orc like smiling. But shape keys are essentially glorified morph targets. That part we never really got into, but again, it's fine if you have the video and everything. Alright, so does anybody else have any more questions? And also, was there anyone here who wanted to get into sculpting? Because if there are no more questions, then we can either I can just call it here, or I can go into sculpting. I mean, I'll be available for the next 2 hours anyways, for questions and stuff. Even if we end the meets, you can just DM me. But lucky for you guys, my GDW isn't till Monday. So I have a little bit more free time right now, and I can help you guys out before you're... Can you morph materials as well? Yeah, I did notice that. That's pretty cool, actually. I thought you were just applying some kind of filter, maybe. Some kind of shader effect. That's what I figured it was. Because it's just going from white to black, right? Morphing colors. That's really cool, actually. Yeah, no, I don't think Blender can do that. Personally, I would have done that with a shader effect. But, oh, actually, hold on. Is this animatable? It is. Never mind. You can actually animate material colors in Blender as well. So any property that you ever see here. Yeah, with shape keys as well. So shape keys still add frames here, since you're using the influences, so you can control how fast it shifts based on the influence, but you still have to keyframe. So anything that can be linked can be keyframed. So you can link the shape keys and the animations, and just keyframe them both, and then bada boom, bada bing. But again, don't worry about it. It's cool that you guys have that though. It's all spoilers though. Spoilers for Thursday. Which I believe Thursday at 11, which is when I think you said your thing was, or Thursday at 9. I am in a class, but we'll just have to skip that, I guess. Alright, so for those of you who are still here, what's your take? Do you want to go over sculpting, or does anybody still have questions, or do you just want to go work on your GDW? Nothing, huh? In that case, I guess we'll just kind of sit here for a little bit. You guys have all taken pretty well to this modeling stuff, though. It's good. Gavin wasn't lying when he was talking about you guys sort of growing here this semester. It's been good to see everybody's progress. You guys are taking to it a lot better than some previous years have for sure. Especially just looking at like your rigging assignments, they're all so much better than anything that we did last year. It's all great. So hopefully that trend continues, and you'll be able to keep modeling for next semester. Which I will also kind of be around for. So I won't be seeing you guys next semester since there's no modeling class, of course, but I'll still be on the Discord probably. And if you have questions, you can always just drop them in modeling animation 2, even though you're not in the course anymore. But then I'll probably go in and answer what I can, though it'll be busy next semester, so maybe not as actively as I have this year or this semester. But since there doesn't seem to be too much interest in sort of moving on to sculpting or whatever, I'll go ahead and say that this lab is over. We answered people's questions.